Hey there, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are going to be taking a deep dive into the world of cost analysis.
Woo! Exciting.
I know, right? It's
Mhm.
that thing that like makes or breaks businesses, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we have got a stack of reports and articles all about how companies use different types of costs to make
Mhm.
smart decisions.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
But let's get into it.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the first things that jumped out from the materials you sent me was this whole idea of accounting costs
Mhm.
versus economic costs.
Right.
And it seems like a pretty basic distinction, like at first glance, right?
Yeah.
But I have a feeling like there's more to it.
Oh, absolutely. There's always more than meets the eye when it comes to costs.
Okay, so like break it down for me. What are accounting costs?
Well, accounting costs are those tangible expenses that show up in a company's financial statements.
Okay.
So, we're talking about wages, rent, cost of raw materials. It's all about tracking the actual money flowing in and out of the business.
Okay, so that makes sense. So then where do economic costs fit into all of this?
So economic costs kind of take a broader view.
Okay.
They include those accounting costs,
Hmm.
but they also factor in what we call implicit costs.
Okay.
And those are the opportunity costs of using resources in one way versus another.
Oh, so it's like not just about like the money you're spending,
Right.
but also the potential gains that you might be missing out on
Exactly.
by choosing one path over another.
Yeah. Think of it this way. Imagine you're a talented baker and you decide to open your own cupcake shop.
Yeah, okay.
You're giving up a steady salary to pursue this dream,
Mm-hmm.
right? That foregone salary
Yeah.
becomes part of the economic cost of starting your business.
Wow.
It's not an expense you're paying, like in the traditional sense,
Yeah.
but it's a real cost nonetheless.
That's a really good example.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it really makes you think about like all the trade-offs involved in every decision we make, right? And I'm already starting to see how this applies to my own life too. Not just like businesses.
Exactly.
Like what if I'm like debating whether to spend my weekend baking,
Yeah.
these elaborate cakes for fun or
Mm.
or taking on a freelance project.
Yeah.
The money that I could be earning freelancing becomes like part of the economic cost of my baking marathon.
100%. And those opportunity costs can be tricky to calculate
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
because they involve like predicting potential outcomes.
Yeah. What if that freelance project leads to like a bigger opportunity? Or what if your passion for baking turns into a successful business?
Exactly. All of that needs to be considered.
So considering economic costs is really about like taking this long-term strategic view.
Yeah.
It's not just about crunching numbers,
Yeah.
It's
Right.
about evaluating like the potential paths not taken. It's like choosing your own adventure book,
Mhm.
but with financial consequences.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It's so true. It really highlights how important it is to understand both accounting costs and economic costs.
Mhm.
Accounting costs keep your business like on track in the short term,
Yeah.
while those economic costs help you make those big picture decisions that shape the future.
Okay. That makes sense. So we've got accounting versus economic costs.
Yeah.
This is bringing to mind another like pair of terms from the materials you sent me.
Okay.
Outlay costs and opportunity costs.
Mm-hmm.
Are those separate ideas or do they relate to what we were just talking about?
No, they're definitely connected.
Okay.
Outlay costs are like what we typically think of as expenses, the actual cash you pay
Okay.
for things like rent, supplies, salaries.
Gotcha.
So they fall under both accounting and economic costs.
Okay, so outlay costs are the concrete, here's the receipt kind of costs.
Exactly.
Okay.
Whereas opportunity costs are more about the value of the next best alternative,
Okay.
And the source material uses the example of capital investment.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you're deciding whether to invest in new equipment for your cupcake business.
Okay, so the outlay cost would be like the actual price tag on that fancy new oven I've had my eye on.
Right. But the opportunity cost is what you could have done with that money instead.
Oh.
Maybe you could have invested it in marketing to reach new customers or used it to develop a new line of gluten-free cupcakes.
Yeah.
Those potential gains that you're missing out on by choosing the oven are part of the opportunity cost.
Okay, this is making my head spin a little.
It is a lot to take in.
Yeah. It's like there's this whole shadow world of costs that we don't always consider.
There is. It's wild.
That's why it's so important to be aware of all these different types of costs.
Yeah.
Because they really can have a huge impact on your decisions and your ultimate success.
Okay, so we've covered accounting versus economic costs outlay versus opportunity cost.
Yeah.
I'm starting to feel like a cost analysis pro.
Uh-huh. Almost.
But there's another concept I'm curious about. The materials you sent mention something about fixed and variable costs.
Okay.
And I have a feeling those terms are about to become my new best friends. I think you're right about that. They're definitely key players in this whole cost analysis game.
Okay, good.
Yeah, they help us understand how costs behave in relation to how much a business is producing.
All right, let's get into it.
All right, so fixed costs are those expenses that stay the same regardless of your output.
Okay, so like even if my cupcake shop is having a slow week and I'm barely selling any cupcakes, those fixed costs are still there.
They are. They're always lurking in the background. Kind
Mhm.
of like your landlord who expects the rent check every month.
Ugh. Yes, exactly.
Mm,
Regardless of whether I'm like rolling in dough or just like rolling dough.
100%. Rent is a perfect example of a fixed cost.
Okay.
So are things like property taxes, insurance premiums, and the salaries of any full-time employees you have.
Hmm.
These costs are locked in for a certain period regardless of your sales volume.
Gotcha. So those are like the constants in the cost equation.
Yeah,
What about variable costs? I'm guessing those are a bit more, well, variable.
you got it. Variable costs are directly tied to how much you're producing. Think about the ingredients for your cupcakes. Flour, sugar, eggs, all that deliciousness.
Hmm.
The more cupcakes you bake, the more ingredients you'll need, and the higher your variable costs will be.
And I bet labor can be a variable cost too, right?
Absolutely.
If I'm slammed with orders, I might need to hire like extra bakers
Yeah,
or pay my current staff overtime.
exactly. Hourly wages are a classic example of a variable cost.
Okay.
And understanding the interplay between fixed and variable costs is essential for businesses,
Hmm.
especially when they're making decisions about things like pricing and production levels.
Okay, this is making me think about my own spending habits in a whole new way.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, my rent is a fixed cost, but my grocery bill is definitely variable.
for sure.
Some weeks, I'm all about those home-cooked meals.
Yeah,
Other weeks, takeout is my best friend.
I feel that. It's
Ah,
all about balance, right?
exactly. So we've got accounting versus economic costs outlay versus opportunity costs, and fixed versus variable costs.
We've covered a lot of ground.
My brain is officially doing a cost-benefit analysis of whether it can handle any more information.
Uh-huh.
But there's one more distinction from our materials that I'm curious about.
Okay.
Short-run versus long-run costs.
Okay.
Is this where time travel comes into play?
Huh. Not quite time travel,
Okay, good.
but it does involve thinking about different time horizons.
Okay.
The distinction between short run and long run is all about how much flexibility a business has to change its inputs.
Okay.
Those are the factors of production that go into making its goods or services.
Gotcha. So remind me, how do economists define those time periods? Is it like short run is this week and long run is next year?
Not exactly. In economics, the short run is defined as a period where at least one input of production is fixed.
Okay.
Think back to those fixed costs we were just discussing. Things like the size of your bakery, the number of ovens you have.
Mhm.
Those aren't things you can easily change overnight.
No, they're not.
No.
So if I suddenly get this huge order for like 1,000 cupcakes,
Oh.
in the short run, I'm limited by like the size of my current kitchen and equipment.
Yeah.
I guess I better hope I have a really big oven.
You would. You'd only be able to adjust variable inputs in the short run.
Hmm.
Things like hiring extra bakers or buying more ingredients.
Okay.
The fixed inputs would constrain your production capacity.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this works. So what are the long run? Is that where I can finally realize my dream of having this like cupcake factory with ovens the size of small cars?
Exactly. In the long run, all inputs become variable.
Okay.
You have the flexibility to change everything about your business,
Hmm.
expand your bakery, invest in new equipment, rethink your entire production process.
Oh, wow.
It's the time frame where you can make those like fundamental changes to your business's scale and structure.
Yeah.
So short run is about like making the most of your current situation, and the long run is about like big picture planning and potential transformation.
Mhm.
It's like the difference between rearranging the furniture in your apartment and like moving to a whole new place.
That's a great way to put it.
And the way businesses think about their costs can really shift dramatically depending on whether they're focused on the short run or the long run.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, so let's say I'm in the short run working with my like existing bakery setup.
Okay.
How do fixed and variable costs play into my decisions about how many cupcakes to bake and what price to charge?
Well, in the short run, a business is primarily focused on managing its variable costs in relation to its output.
Okay.
They're trying to find that sweet spot where they can maximize their profits given their existing capacity.
So I'm guessing that means figuring out how to get the most out of my current ovens and staff without like running into bottlenecks or overspending on ingredients.
Exactly. It's all about finding that optimal level of production where you're not wasting resources,
Yeah.
but you're also not leaving money on the table by underproducing.
This makes you realize there's a lot more strategy involved in baking than I initially thought.
There is.
Haha. But what about the long run? When you're thinking about potentially expanding your business
Hmm.
or making major investments, how do those cost considerations come into play?
Well, that's where things get really exciting. In the long run, businesses have the freedom to choose a whole new set of fixed costs
Okay.
by, say, building a bigger bakery or adopting a revolutionary new cupcake making technology.
Yeah.
And this is where we start to see the power of something called economies of scale.
Ooh, economies of scale. That sounds intriguing.
It is.
Yeah.
It can really make or break a business, especially in the long run.
Okay, so we're going to need to dive more into that in our next segment.
Absolutely. We've got lots more to discuss.
All right, stay tuned. All right, we're back, and my brain is preheated
Haha.
to learn about these economies of scale you mentioned.
Okay.
It sounds like something straight out of a superhero movie.
Haha.
Like, my tiny cupcake bakery suddenly gains superpowers as it grows.
I love that analogy. That's a great way to think about it.
Uh-huh.
Economies of scale are all about how increasing your scale of production
Okay.
can actually lead to lower costs per unit.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like a secret weapon for businesses looking to become more efficient and competitive.
So it's not just about making more cupcakes, it's about making each cupcake more cost effectively.
Exactly. Let's say you're currently baking 100 cupcakes a day
Okay.
in your small bakery.
Mm-hmm.
You've got one mixer, one oven,
Yeah.
and you're handling everything yourself. Now imagine you expand to a larger space.
Okay.
Invest in a few more ovens and mixers and hire some specialized bakers who are like masters of frosting and sprinkles.
Ooh, I can already picture like those perfectly aligned rows of cupcakes,
Mm.
fresh out of the oven, ready to be decorated.
It's a beautiful sight.
It is. It's a cupcake lover's dream.
Right. And here's where the economies of scale kick in.
Okay.
Because you're buying ingredients in bulk, you get a discount from your suppliers.
Right.
Your specialized bakers are super efficient at their tasks, churning out cupcakes like a well-oiled machine.
Mm-hmm.
You can even afford to get like a high-tech automated cupcake decorating machine that adds those fancy swirls and designs with like precision and speed.
Wow, this is starting to sound less like a bakery and more like a cupcake factory.
It is. But the key takeaway here is
Yeah.
that your cost per cupcake actually goes down,
Oh,
even though you're producing way more cupcakes overall.
that's incredible. So there are different like flavors of economies of scale, so to speak.
Yeah. There are. Some are technical,
Okay.
like using more efficient equipment or spreading the cost of specialized machinery over a larger output. Others are managerial.
Right.
Like you can afford to hire expert managers who optimize different aspects of the business, from purchasing to production to marketing.
So economies of scale are about becoming bigger and more specialized, which
Mhm.
ultimately drives down those per unit costs. It's like the business equivalent of buying in bulk at the grocery store.
Exactly.
But I'm remembering that you said the long run average cost curve is U-shaped,
It is.
which means that eventually those costs start creeping back up.
Right.
Why is that? Because my cupcake empire dream eventually hit a wall.
That's a great question, and it highlights the importance of finding the optimal scale of production.
Okay.
There's a limit to how much bigger and more specialized you can get before things start to backfire.
Oh,
Yeah, eventually a business might start experiencing what are called diseconomies of scale.
diseconomies of scale. That doesn't sound good. Is this where my cupcake empire crumbles?
Not necessarily, but it does point to the challenges that can arise when a business grows beyond a certain point.
Okay.
Things can get too complex, communication can break down, and decision-making can become slow and cumbersome.
So it's like my kitchen, but on a massive scale.
Haha, exactly.
Too many cooks in the kitchen really can spoil the broth,
They can.
or in this case, the cupcake batter.
Yes, and those diseconomies of scale translate into higher average costs.
Okay.
Maybe your management overhead balloons as you add more layers of bureaucracy,
Mm.
or your massive factory becomes difficult to manage, leading to waste delays and inefficiencies.
Okay, this long-run average cost curve is starting to feel like a high-stakes balancing act.
It is.
You want to grow enough to reap those sweet economies of scale,
Yeah.
but not so much that you fall into the trap of diseconomies. It's all about finding that sweet spot.
Absolutely. And that's why understanding cost analysis is so crucial for businesses.
Yeah.
It provides a framework for making those strategic decisions about how much to produce, what to invest in, and how to structure your operations to achieve like maximum efficiency.
This has been a truly eye-opening deep dive into the world of costs. I'm starting to see everything differently now, from my entrepreneurial cupcake dreams to my own personal spending habits.
I love that. And that's the power of understanding these concepts.
Yeah.
It empowers you to make smarter decisions, whether you're running a business or just navigating your daily life.
Okay, listeners, here's something to ponder as you go about your day.
Okay.
Think about a recent decision you made, big or small.
Mm-hmm.
What were the visible outlay costs involved?
Yeah.
What about those less obvious opportunity costs? The potential gains you might have missed out on by choosing one path over another. I guarantee that once you start thinking about costs in this multidimensional way,
Mm-hmm.
you'll start seeing the world differently. Until next time, keep on diving deep. Okay, so we're back. And we left off talking about economies of scale
We did.
and how they can like make or break a business.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm ready to hear more about these economies of scale.
Okay, well, remember, economies of scale are all about how, as production increases,
Yeah.
the cost per unit can decrease.
Okay, yeah.
So like you were saying earlier, it's like that bulk discount you get at the grocery store.
Right, exactly. Like buying a huge thing of mayonnaise, even though you know you're only going to use half of it.
Uh-huh, exactly. Only at a much larger scale.
Yeah. Okay, so give me an example of how this works in a business setting.
Okay, let's think about your cupcake bakery.
Okay.
If you're only making a small number of cupcakes, let's say like 100 per day,
Mm-hmm.
you're probably buying your ingredients in relatively small quantities.
Right.
So you're not getting the best price. But if you increase your production to, let's say, 1,000 cupcakes a day,
Whoa, 1,000 cupcakes?
yeah, then you can start buying your flour, your sugar, your eggs in bulk.
Okay.
And you'll likely get a significant discount from your suppliers.
Oh, that makes sense, because they want your business.
Exactly. And then think about your labor costs. If you're making 1,000 cupcakes a day, you might need to hire specialized bakers.
Yeah.
Maybe one who's amazing at frosting and another who's like a sprinkle artist.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
Right? And because they're specialized, they can work more efficiently,
Yeah.
producing more cupcakes per hour.
So it's like a win-win for everyone, right?
Exactly. The business wins because their costs are lower,
Mm-hmm.
and the customers win because hopefully those cupcakes are even more delicious.
Okay, so economies of scale are basically about getting bigger and more efficient,
Yeah,
which leads to lower costs per cupcake.
exactly.
Okay, but I'm remembering that you said the long-run average cost curve is U-shaped. So that means eventually those costs start creeping back up.
Right.
Why is that?
Hmm.
Does my cupcake empire dream eventually hit a wall?
That's a great question. And it highlights this really important concept called diseconomies of scale.
Diseconomies of scale.
Yeah, basically, it means that at a certain point, getting even bigger can actually start to hurt a business.
Oh no.
Yeah, think about it this way. If your cupcake bakery gets too big, you might start running into problems.
Okay, like what?
Well, maybe communication starts to break down.
Oh, yeah.
It's harder to keep track of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Decision-making gets slower.
Yeah.
And suddenly you're not as efficient as you used to be.
So it's like my kitchen, but on a massive scale.
Haha, exactly.
Too many cooks in the kitchen really can spoil the broth, or in this case, the cupcake batter.
100%. And all of those things, those communication breakdowns, the slower decision-making those can lead to higher costs.
Okay, so it's like this delicate balancing act.
It is.
You want to grow enough to take advantage of economies of scale, but not so much that you end up with diseconomies of scale.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, it's like walking a tightrope.
Kind of. And that's why cost analysis is so important. It helps businesses figure out where that sweet spot is.
Wow, this has been so fascinating. I'm looking at costs in a whole new way now.
Me too.
So, listeners, as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of cost analysis, here's a challenge for you.
Okay.
Think about a business you admire, any business,
Okay.
and think about how they might be leveraging economies of scale to keep their costs down. Maybe they've got super efficient production processes,
Yeah,
or they're masters at negotiating with suppliers.
that's a good one.
Or maybe they found that perfect balance between growth and efficiency to avoid those pesky diseconomies of scale.
Yeah.
Till next time, keep on diving deep.